MSNBC anchor Chuck Todd is facing a lot of backlash for quoting a right-wing columnist, approvingly, I might add, who described online supporters of Bernie Sanders as a, quote, digital brown shirt brigade. Take a look.
There is going to be a huge resentment if some huge pool of money goes elsewhere, if Bloomberg makes a move, if Biden collapses, if there's a Stop Bernie movement. That is going to be to hell will pay with the Bernie people because they are so committed.
Hey, I want to bring up something that Jonathan last put in the Bulwark today, and it was about how, in Ruth, we've all been on the receiving end of the Bernie online brigade. And here's what he says. He says, no other candidate has anything like this sort of digital brown shirt brigade. I mean, except for Donald Trump. The question no one is asking is this: what if you can't win the presidency without an online mob? What if we now live in a world where having a bullying agro-social media army running around, popping anyone who sticks their head up is either an important ingredient for or a critical marker of success?
Wow. Okay,
I know everybody's freaking out about this, but you saw the MAGA rally that's preparing around here. There are people coming from 3 or 4 states on that. That's real, and you know, this is like Bernie.
This is like Bernie. Basically comparing him to a MAGA rally and comparing them to Nazis. Basically, look, he didn't make that comparison originally, right? So this was, again, Jonathan Last in the Bulwark, but basically he said, well, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with the phrasing. Well, now, wait a minute. There's a way that you could say, hey, look, I have some problems with some of the Bernie Sanders supporters online. You know, they're mean. They sometimes tweet mean things at me. They call me Tuck Chode or whatever. But but you know, I don't agree with the Nazi thing, right? He could have said that. He didn't. It's very important to point out what he did not say. He didn't disavow that language and basically tacitly agreed with it. Look, it's not as if I thought that, you know, MSNBC could get worse. Turns out I was wrong. They got worse. Now they're literally calling people online who support Bernie Sanders, or at least agreeing with other people who are calling online supporters of Bernie Sanders Nazis. That's basically it. Again, digital brown shirt brigade, ironically, of the first Jewish candidate. Chuck Todd, you should be ashamed of yourself. Do you know why, like, you're getting called out online, Chuck? Do you know? It's because you say things like this. That's why. And it's not just people like Chuck Todd, which, by the way, half of that very panel has said terrible things about Bernie Sanders. Dr. Jason Johnson, he said terrible things. Look, Andrea Mitchell, but by the way, Andrea Mitchell's on that panel, right? Bernie Sanders literally saved Andrea Mitchell from getting ran over by cameramen. Like, seriously. So, look, you know why that's important? It's because it shows that who Bernie Sanders is. Bernie Sanders is just a good person at heart. And that's part of why we like him, but really, why most Bernie Sanders supporters like him is because of the policy. He has good policy that will help so many people in need. Bernie support, in many cases, and if you really kind of dive into why people support Bernie Sanders, it's not because of, we like his hair and we really like the way that he rolls up his sleeves, which he doesn't do. No, it's policy. And the reason is, for a lot of people, these policies are literally the difference between life and death. For example, when it comes to Medicare for all, right? People are literally fighting for their lives, can't afford their health insurance, rationing their insulin, right? Making sure that they can survive, putting off essential surgeries or, treatments, hoping that someday they're going to be able to actually be able to afford to get a treatment on something that could be cancer. It's life or death, right? So now excuse those same people who are either going through that or know someone who's going through that for being just a little bit rude online when they see their candidate getting attacked for ridiculous things, disingenuous attacks. For example, there is that one recent video here that I showed you. I'm going to show you again here. This is Chris Matthews basically saying if Bernie wins, or if the Reds won, if the Soviets won, Bernie Sanders would have been cheering for my execution.
I have my own views of the word socialist, and I'll be glad to share them with you in private. And they go back to the early 1950s. I have an attitude about them. I remember the Cold War. I have an attitude towards Castro. I believe if Castro and the Reds had won the Cold War, there would have been executions in Central Park, and I might have been one of the ones getting executed. And certain other people would be there cheering, okay? So I have a problem with people who took the other side. I don't know who Bernie supports over these years. I don't know what he means by social. 1 week it's Denmark. We're going to be like Denmark. Okay, that's harmless. That's basically a capitalist country with a lot of good social welfare programs. Denmark is harmless.
He's pretty clearly in the Denmark category, yeah.
Are you sure? How do you know? Did he tell you that?
Well, I mean, that's what he says, and that's what his agenda calls for, right?
Yeah.
He's not calling for any...
Let's see. Let's figure that one out.
Well, we haven't seen a campaign yet where video of him praising the other version,
right,
which is Castro, has been used.
Well, but that
will be used.
That's a question
of
how
that plays.
Of how what the effect that has.
Well, what does he think of Castro? That's a great question. What did you think of Fidel Ismo? We all thought he was great when he first. I think he was cheering like mad for him when he first went in, and then he became a communist and started shooting every one of his enemies.
Complete and utter meltdown. What a ridiculous attack. And look, earlier you had Lawrence O'Donnell, who was talking about how, Bernie's chances in New Hampshire, he lost half of his support. He's literally leading in New Hampshire, and they still find a way to cut him down. Not only that, Joanne Reed constantly attacks Bernie Sanders. Dr. Jason Johnson, as I mentioned, constantly attacks Sanders, all of them with disingenuous attacks. And you wonder why people online hit back. It's almost as if there's a situation here where there's a bully that keeps punching us in the face. And as soon as we hit back, we are the ones who get in trouble. Because it turns out that bully is connected to his principal's son, right? It's sort of our situation. The mainstream media is so in bed with the political establishment that they're basically one and the same. They enable each other and they help each other. They go hand in glove, right? They attack Bernie Sanders relentlessly, and then they use the resultant backlash that they will get from people online who see these unfair attacks as proof that no, it's the Bernie bros. They're the ones that are bad. They're the online mob. All we're doing is just lying and smearing a candidate that we don't like because we're afraid of our taxes going up. That's all it is. It is absolutely gross. Now, among the first to respond to Chuck Todd was Brianna Joy Gray. Now, she's the national press secretary for Bernie Sanders' campaign. She said, quote, "Digital brown shirt brigade. That's how our Jewish candidate supporters are being described on mainstream media. The contempt shown for ordinary people is really something." And look, that's another angle to this, right? It's another part. These mainstream pundits, it's not as if they're calling like progressive pundits, like people like me, like, oh, you guys are the mob. You guys are garbage, right? You guys are so mean. You're the Bernie bros, right? I honestly don't care what they call me. But it's not just people like me who have careers in progressive media. No, they're calling regular people, regular working class Americans. They're saying these things that you know, they're like the Nazis, right? That's what they're telling everyone else that Bernie supporters are. Again, Bernie supporters are mainly teachers, right? Teachers, people who work at Target, Amazon warehouse workers. Those are the biggest supporters and donators to the Bernie Sanders campaign. Those are the exact same people that Chris Matthews and everyone and Chuck Todd are saying are bullies, are the mean ones. That's what that is. And it is absolutely, completely disgusting. Gross, gross, gross. Now, she also said, I'm sorry, this is Raphael Shimonov, right? Now, he's co-founder of the advocacy group, The Jewish Vote, said, quote, "When Chuck Todd attacked us, including Jews like me with family erased by the Holocaust and pogroms, for being brown shirts, it's bad enough. But the implication also is that Bernie Sanders, whose family was executed by Nazis, is also Hitler. He said Todd should apologize and resign for comparing the first major Jewish candidate for president whose family was executed by Nazis to Hitler. He's right. Now, Florida Democratic congressional candidate Jen Perelman also called Todd's remarks, quote, indefensible. As a fellow Jew who's aware of half Bernie's family was murdered in the Holocaust, he knows better. We're not Nazis. God, the MSM makes me sick. And we're just getting started. Absolutely right. Now, imagine, like, if that's not bad enough, and she makes a great point. Imagine the explosion of hatred if Bernie Sanders wins New Hampshire and then goes on to get the most delegates in Super Tuesday. It's going to be a complete and full total meltdown. And look, this is based on fear. Maybe because of some mean tweets, right? But I don't think so. More importantly, these people, I think they're afraid that they're going to have to pay more in taxes. I think they're afraid that they're going to lose their jobs, because of the massive media consolidation. That Bernie Sanders would use his antitrust powers to break up these large media conglomerates, and they lose their cushy positions. Or maybe they're just afraid of being wrong. I don't know. Or maybe it's just, again, they don't want to pay more in taxes so that everybody can get health care. I don't know. Maybe to them, that's worse than anything else that they can imagine. But this is all happening. Those considerations are happening. All while regular people, us, the 99%, are fighting to maintain, or not maintain, but are fighting to actually get health care. While they're fighting to maintain their privileged positions in media. We're fighting for our lives and to save our society from environmental collapse. So again, excuse me when I say that we've got no time for your goddamn fake civility. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.